All right, we are live. How are you doing?
Hello. Good. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we were going to talk we talked about talking about a couple different things. But what would you like to talk about?
Um. Well. How about like the pet thing is good. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. Well, we can start with that one if you like.
Okay, yeah. And then you're from New Zealand. Is it the same there where like the most popular pets to have would just be cats and dogs?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I said sort of. That's the only ones I feel knowledgeable enough about to really even talk about. And I'll be honest with you straight up. I'm a cat man, so I've never really I have limited experience with owning dogs and stuff like that, but like I've never owned a dog, but I've been around people with a pet dog. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I've only had cats, and cats are my main like pet that I'm familiar with. And in fact,
Okay.
yeah, I don't. I think most places I've ever been in life have always had a pet cat. You know,
Gotcha. Okay.
so that's just
Well,
sort of my background.
okay, yeah, for sure. So I guess one way I might want to frame this is if we never had domesticated any cats or dogs, would you think that it would be reasonable to domesticate them now?
Um, Honestly, in the case of a cat, yes, but in the case of a dog, I don't think so. Um,
Okay.
and to me, there is a bit of a distinction there in the sense that I think the cat is a lot more of a how to explain like the power dynamic is a lot more even between a cat and a person than a dog and a person. Like a dog is inherently kind of submissive and obedient towards you. Whereas
Mhm.
anybody that owns a cat will tell you straight up, a cat does what a cat wants to do.
Gotcha. Are you in favor of people having cats that go inside and outside or just keeping them inside?
Well, so yeah, I mean, I have to like my cat's an outside cat. You can't really keep him inside, and I am conscious of the fact that that's like ecologically irresponsible, right? Because they're not a native species, and they are kind of jazzing with the ecosystem. But it's not too bad here in New Zealand. We just sort of monitor that they don't attack like native birds and stuff like that, and we just let them attack rodents, basically. Um,
Gotcha. Okay. So one of my biggest concerns is so we humans create things that can be destructive, but they're good things like cars and whatnot, and
yeah,
animals don't really know how to interact with those things. So I think it's almost responsible of us to keep them away. So like I don't know in New Zealand if you guys have like a lot of deer, but here in the state that I live in the U.S., deer will every once in a while come out of the forest and walk onto the road and get hit by a car. And
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's kind of
Deer in the
like
headlights. Yeah,
yeah, and I think it's kind of our
yeah,
duty to fence them out. That way they can just live their lives not having to interact with these giant weapons we created called cars. And so
yeah,
that's one of my
yeah.
biggest concerns with cats. Um, and I think it would depend on how often they do get hit. But I feel like cats get hit by cars here and there. And so it's maybe it's not responsible of us. Like, are you concerned about your cat getting hit by a
Well,
car?
yes, and this is what sort of mean is it, you only really here in New Zealand anyway. You only really have an outside cat in a more sort of a rural situation. Like when I say my cat's an outside cat, I mean he has like a territory. He has like a couple acres he can roam over, but he doesn't go like on the street or on
Oh,
the
okay.
road or anything like that. He just has a big, basically a giant backyard. But it's yeah. So that's where he's doing his roaming. Yeah, if you like, I used to live in town, and when I lived in town, I would keep my cat inside all the time, exactly for that reason. But I promised him that I would get in the territory because it's obvious that, like, he didn't like being locked up. He can move so fast, it's insane. They need space to like play and run and train and do their little cat life cycle, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's kind of how I'm torn. Like, in one sense, I don't think we should force them to be living in an area where they don't have options. But then in another sense, I don't think we should let them be out and around cars. And so I guess I hadn't thought about the idea of only having them in an area that's like out in the country where there's plenty of room.
Yeah, well, I'm really lucky because I live in a city called Dunedin, and it's in New Zealand, right? And basically the transition between like the normal suburb to the kind of more country suburb is basically instant, you know. So it's like I'm walking back to my place in the quote unquote country now. You know, whereas in a lot of other places, like that would be impossible because it'd be a really long drive or whatever, you know, between like the shops in the suburbs and the country. But so yeah, it is a little bit of a different situation for me, and it's like I guess I've actually constructed this situation around having the cat. Sorry, the wind is picking up.
Yeah. Oh, it's all right. I see. Okay. Does your cat ever eat things outside, or do you just constantly feed it?
No, but yeah, so he will hunt and he will eat stuff outside. Like no matter how much I feed him, and I really can't really stop him from doing that.
Yeah.
Like I say, if he tries to attack, like generally speaking, there's like a strata. So like the native birds will generally be so high up in the trees that the cat will never get to them. But if he does try to get a native bird, then I will just sort of intervene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Gotcha. Okay.
that's sort of what has to happen. But I will let him kill rodents and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess when it comes to food, I have two kind of concerns that aren't really connected to cats killing wildlife, but it's a mixture of things. So I think if we are going to have pets, we need to keep them healthy. So your average pet food is a very unhealthy pet food with like a lot of fillers of like grains and just overly processed. And I don't think it's
Yeah,
fair to domesticate animals and then force them to eat food that makes them unhealthy. But at the same
yeah,
time, I don't know if we should be breeding and raising animals to kill to feed the pets, unless
yeah.
it's potentially unless it's for health reasons. So, like when you pick out cat food, do you like pay extra to get the high quality stuff, or what are your thoughts on that?
It honestly it depends. It depends. As a general rule, my cat prefers like real meat, basically. And you can so you
Like
can
raw
get in
fresh
New
meat.
Zealand. Yeah, yeah, basically. So in New Zealand, you can get pet pet grade meat, I suppose, is what they would call it. And yeah, I don't know. I sort of inspect it, and you know, if it looks really bad to me, I won't give it to him because I'm like, you know, I mean, it kind of sounds gross, but I'm almost like basically, look, if it doesn't even look like food to me, then I shouldn't be giving it to him just because he's a cat or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah, we found after a lot of experimentation, we found like fresh raw meat food that he really likes that is relatively affordable. Um, and so yeah, I tend to just get him that. But also he gets real cats get real fussy, dude. Like no matter how
Hmm.
much they like a food, if you give them that same food too many days in a row, they're gonna stop eating it and they're just gonna want to try something new. And so you have to kind of keep switching it up a bit.
Yeah. Well, and I guess if it's an outside cat as well, if it gets picky enough, it'll just try to go find a new type of rodent or something to get.
Oh yeah, 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 100%. And it's very interesting because sometimes the cat will feel like I'm not eating enough, and he'll go and catch me a rodent, and he'll bring it to me. And like you can
Yeah.
tell when he caught one for me because he if he caught it for himself, he will eat it. But
Hmm.
if he catches it for me, he'll present it to me like, "Oh, here, Dad, I noticed that you're a bit hungry. I caught you a mouse or whatever."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I wonder if it's part of their instincts from evolution, where if they used to hunt in packs and then they would share with each other, and then the cat imprints on you and views you as a fellow cat or something.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I've realized is my cat seems to see me as like a really oversized disabled cat. You know what I mean? Like he wonders why I can't move as fast as him or jump as high as him or why I don't have claws or fangs. I can see its little head going around. But he's like, he knows that we're friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
that's sort of it. But yeah, I don't think he has a concept that like I'm a human that can do these human things. He just
mhm.
sort of looks at me as like an oversized, really useless cat.
Gotcha. Okay, well, now that you've experienced your own cat living with all this space to run around in, would you consider it to be immoral to breed a cat into existence if it's going to spend its entire life inside, like trapped inside of a house?
Yeah, so I'll be honest. A lot of maybe this is not like what I'm supposed to be arguing for, but I'm pretty much just straight up against breeding, man. I don't
Okay.
really think we should be breeding at all. Like my cat's a rescue cat. I had a choice to let him die or to take him for a pet. But I don't
Yeah.
even view it as like I own him or anything. He's a
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's his own being. I just didn't want to let him die. Like I found him when he was such a tiny, tiny little kitten. He didn't have a chance. He didn't have a family or anything at the time. Yeah, he
Okay.
was real small. And I found him in the middle of the city in town. And so that's why I sort of took him. And then now I've found him this place in the country, and he's pretty happy and big and stuff. But yeah, I do worry about like the impact on the ecosystem because it's like
Hmm.
I've introduced this apex predator to this ecosystem. Like nothing
Yeah.
else there can stands a chance against my cat. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I think we mostly agree on the topic. I mean, I don't think humans should own animals, but the only type of example I've ever come up with that I think is fine would be like if I lived out in the woods, I built a cabin and I didn't have a door, there's just a doorway, and like some wild animal came up and was friendly with me and it came into the house and
Yeah,
it slept on the floor by me, but it could leave whenever it wanted. I'm fine with
yeah.
that. But the idea of
Yeah, well, I have
yeah.
that same policy, open door policy. I never lock my cat in, so he can come and go whenever he wants.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and so like I think yeah, and so I'm also kind of torn on the idea of raising animals to feed the animals we keep, but while we have
Yeah.
animals, I'm in favor of keeping them as healthy as possible. I think health is probably the best argument for the use of animals for food. So yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%, dude. Like honestly, like I even when it go, I don't know if you want to talk about that subject as well, but even when it comes to like humans consuming animal products, I went like, and everyone loves to tell me, oh well, you must just be so ignorant then, because the vegan diet is the best possible diet, and blah blah blah. But it's just like in my own personal experience, I can testify that I am literally way more healthy when I do consume animal products, and I wish I
Mm.
could. You know what I mean? It's not that I have this emotional attachment to consuming animal products. It literally is a health thing, and like, if I
Yeah.
could have a vegan diet and still feel just as healthy, then I would. You know what I mean? It wouldn't bother me. I'm not one of those meat people that's like this like taking pride in it. You know,
Yeah, yeah, for
it's
sure.
just it
Well,
literally is just a health thing. Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome. Well, let me give you a little backstory on myself, and then I'll ask you some questions about the health side of it. But so I've
sure.
been I've been pretty much completely vegan for about 8 years. But then
Oh wow.
but in the past like 6 months or maybe past year or so, I got some health information from my doctor. It made me want to try a few things. So I left being vegan to add in a little bit of pasture raised eggs and then wild caught fish. And
Yeah.
I dabbled with that for a while. I got a lot of heat because I was willing to admit that on my YouTube channel and whatnot.
Oh God, to the vegan community. Oh Lord, they
Yes.
would have ripped you apart, buddy.
Yep,
Yeah.
they did. It's pretty bad. But
Yeah.
after dabbling in it, I went back to not consuming it. I'm currently at the not consuming it stage, and
Yeah.
I like basically I think I am perfectly fine and healthy eating completely vegan diet, doing it the right way. But I also accept the idea that, you know, it's so new to us that we don't have all the right answers. So I would hate the idea of forcing it upon everybody. But what I think vegans should do that we don't do enough of is try to work with people on making sure that they have good, reasonable reasons and that they're doing a lot less of the pointless, harmful side of it. So if
Oh
somebody
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, if somebody's eating like grass fed, free range, like the most like if everything they're eating is only for health and they're not eating unhealthy animal products, then that's the least of our worries. But I don't know about New Zealand, but in the US, about 80% of the US is overweight and people eat because they're addicted to
Yeah.
food. And so
Yeah.
I guess what I think is important to get out in the world and talk about is how people should not be eating McDonald's. And well, I don't know if you guys have
A
McDonald's in New
100%
Zealand.
agree. No, yeah, we
Um,
do, and it's trash, mate. It's absolute trash.
yeah, and
Hopefully,
so
I'm not going to get in trouble for dissing McDonald's, but
oh,
yeah, it's
you're
trash.
fine.
It's absolute trash, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess I would just prefer a world where we could get all the humans to work towards being healthy first. Everybody
Yeah.
lose weight, get to a good weight, eat
Yeah, and I think
what's
if we had,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I think if we had more, like if we had actually efficient kind of social programs where we produced good, healthy, exotic varieties of produce that actually come together. You know what I mean? Because especially in New Zealand, I found trying to be vegan in New Zealand because my experience with veganism is I did do it for like a whole year one time. I'm one of those people. Like I talk my shit and then back it up. Like I actually did it. And
Mhm.
the thing is, it was really really hard to get the produce that you actually want. You basically have to go with whatever is affordable that week at the supermarket, and that's all you can get. And sometimes it is like so bad it's insane. Like there is just no good food source available, especially in the middle of winter. Like I mean, ironically, broccoli gets cheaper here in the winter, so that is kind of good. But
Mhm.
like one of my main meals was just broccoli and onion because that was literally
Mhm.
all I could buy. And like
Gotcha.
it's not a bad meal, but it's not enough. You know what I mean? Like when you look at like really good vegan diets, they're filled with an array of various different produces
Yeah.
that, and often I feel like access to those just isn't available. But if it was, then the vegan diet would be so much more viable.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's complicated, and it depends on where you're at. Like a lot of the most inexpensive foods are healthy, whole food, vegan foods. Like if you get dried beans and dried whole grains in bulk, it's some of like brown rice and black beans.
That is,
It's
yeah, that is really smart. Yeah, I have never, yeah, I've never done that. So
yeah.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of things that are good for you, like mangoes and papayas, are way too expensive if you don't live in the countries that they're made in. So everybody kind of just has
Oh
to
yeah.
do the best from what they're convinced of. You know, we can look into the studies, we can look into what makes sense. It seems to make sense to eat non-processed foods, and like even though I think people can be fine not eating animal products, at very least there's no good argument for eating like hot dogs. Like you're
No,
making
yeah,
an
100%.
animal
I agree. I
suffer,
agree
and
completely.
yeah,
Yeah,
and so that's
I completely agree with those
yeah,
sort of things. Like I definitely don't think that we should be making. I mean, I'm against processed foods, basically, full stop. I'm sure there are some exceptions in terms of like real basic processes, but my general rule is like if you can't produce that yourself on a farm and in your kitchen, then it's too processed, you know.
yeah. Here, I got a question for you from somebody that's watching this conversation. Um, this person points out that he thinks we're frugivores, so because we're closely related to like chimpanzees and like
Yeah,
bonobos,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so if we've evolved in the same way, and like 75% of their diet is from fruit, and then the rest of it is from various different things, including some animal related stuff like termites and little bits of like insects maybe for some protein or whatever. Do you think that
Sure.
we likely evolved to eat similar, or do you have many thoughts on that?
Yes, I don't think we've followed a similar evolutionary path, dietarily speaking, but I'm not an expert in that. I guess my main argument would be that I feel like the human form in the like for the bulk of like when Homo sapiens emerged, right? So like I think it's probably about 200,000 years ago. The technical scientific species that is us was like first emerging, and for the bulk of that time, we've essentially been hunter gatherers, and I feel like the strategy that is optimal for hunting and gathering for a human is slightly different because you have a strategy of sustained long term pursuits. It's not so much of like an instant gratification thing where you're in an abundant environment and you're constantly getting one more little gold coin or one more banana or whatever, right? It's more like, okay, well, this is a really harsh, horrible environment, and we're going to have nothing for days, but then we're finally going to hit jackpot and get a bunch of food or whatever. And so I think human bodies are designed to function best on really slow burning fats rather than fast burning sugars, is my ultimate point
Gotcha.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of complicated because I don't know how much of what we have done is necessarily what is best, but it's definitely a good way to look at it because even though I think fruits are very healthy, like we've cultivated them to get the most sugary fruits now versus
Yeah.
like bitter berries that would have existed back in the day, but they
Yeah,
would have
and
been
I'll
fruit. They would
I'll
have
be
had
straight up.
sugar.
I avoid sugar even in fruits for the
Oh,
most
really?
part. So in my personal diet, I don't eat sugar because I've noticed that every time I do have a glucose spike, it takes my body out of that slow fat burning mode. And
Hmm.
and even though I'm full of energy for a little bit, I know I'm going to crash. It's what they talk about as like the sugar crash, and really it's a glucose spike. Like you can induce that with carbohydrates as well. It doesn't have to be actual like sugar in the way we think of it.
Yeah.
But anything that causes a glucose spike, it kind of just jazzes with my system too much. But that might be a particularity about me. And like I say, I'm not an expert, so I really don't know like if that's
Yeah.
overly relevant. But yeah, I just thought I should mention in terms of my own personal diet, I completely avoid sugar,
Gotcha.
even
Gotcha.
even in fruits. Yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah,
but
and I
I do
think
agree if you're going to have sugar, fruit sugar is the most healthy. Yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, basically I try to think of what's reasonable and like yeah, and I think we agree on this, but yeah, if if you're eating for health, you're eating for health. If you're going to make something suffer and die just for your taste pleasure, that's not good.
Yeah.
And I think if
Yeah.
people would talk about it more, I think there would be so many like right now the population of vegans is so small, but I would say probably 50% of adults in the world would be in favor of laws that protect animals from being harmed. And if we could
Oh
only
yeah,
talk about that more instead of you're either vegan and you're good or you're not vegan and you're bad, then
yeah. I think
yeah.
the thing is the vegan movement. You guys need more. You guys need more res. You know, you need people like me that can make it like interesting to interact with and think about. Like so many vegans are like real combative and nasty, and like, okay, yeah, it is a really serious issue, and good on you for morally crusading, but it's just not really how you win hearts and minds.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Definitely. I just looked it up because in where I live, we just passed a law this year that outlawed battery cages for hens. So eggs that are
Nice,
sold
that's
in the
good. Yeah,
state I'm
yeah.
in. Yeah, and I looked it up in New Zealand, and you guys did it 1 year ahead of us, actually. So you guys did that last
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah. That was a big thing. That was a big thing in my country, and like everyone is for that. Like honestly, what a lot of people don't understand the horrors that go on in the factory farming industries, and like I have zero sympathy for those people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like the people that actually like torture animals in like horrible conditions and stuff like that. You know, yeah, I have um zero time for them. You know,
Yeah.
I would be happy to give them a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a terrible thing. Terrible thing. Yeah, and I've seen some of this kind of stuff in my own country, and yeah, the good thing is that when it's actually exposed within in the right way, publicized in the right way, the majority of people are on the animal's side. It's
Yeah.
it's not it's not a too controversial of an issue when it's outright animal abuse like that. But it also needs to be publicized in the right way. Like this is part of the problem with the vegan community is that people always want to come at shit from a virtue signaling perspective, and
Mhm.
it's like, dude, like I don't know when it's real animal abuse, like obvious animal abuse. I feel like you have to come at it from the perspective of, okay, surely we can all agree this is wrong. Let's fuck these people up, like
Right?
you know,
Yes.
fuck their shit. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I'm not trying to say I'm better than you or whatever. I'm just saying we can all agree that this guy needs to get fucked, right? Like surely,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I'm almost certain that if all vegans that go out doing either making like YouTube videos like this or going on the street having talks with people, if instead of trying to turn everybody vegan, if they all were just talking with people like you who eat meat and trying to talk about laws that could change to improve animal
Mm,
welfare, I think within a year, a couple of years, there would be an insane amount of animal welfare, like just a whole change of how factory farming works. But the problem is, most vegans won't do it. They will only say we're fighting to make new vegans. And then the people
yeah,
like you don't get a chance to
you
talk to
treat it too
anybody.
much like a religion. Yeah, the vegans treat it too much like a religion. You know, it's like I say, it's almost like if they're really caring about animal welfare, they need to just get money together and pay somebody else to advocate for them because they're not competent enough in their advocacy to actually change people's hearts and minds, which is supposed to be the whole point of advocacy. Like if you're not actually if you're not actually making a net positive impact, then it's just virtue signaling. You're not actually advocating anything.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I definitely agree. And it's hard to know. I mean, everybody has their opinions, and I'm glad to hear them all. But I think me and you align pretty well with this. How about other aspects of animal use, like for entertainment? Do you think people should be able to use animals for doing like dog races or circuses?
Oh, phew. On as a general rule, hell no. But there probably is some very niche example where I'm like, kind of okay with it, I suppose. I'm just trying to think of that. I'm very
Yeah.
conscious of the fact that I'm a hypocrite. Like I am a hypocrite in many respects because I'm so honest and I'm stream of consciousness, man. I don't think about what I'm saying before I've
Yeah.
said it. I just put it out there.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
I'm guessing like I mean a lot of people in my country like to race horses and I don't know if those horses would really even I mean, I don't know if they would even exist. Like if they weren't if people didn't make money off keeping them and racing them, and I don't know, is it cruel to for a horse to run around a track? I don't, maybe, but
Yeah.
that's a hard thing for me to draw a moral judgment on because a horse as an animal is designed to run fast for long distances, and they do like it. But you know, I don't know how much is the jockey on the back of the horse smacking it with a whip like how
Yeah.
bad is that? You can't feel that from a horse's perspective.
Yeah, I
So
think
yeah,
it
I
would
don't
be
know.
similar. I think it'd be similar to what we talked about with pets, where you have the aspect of breeding them to be there for you. And I feel like so in the wild, like wild
Yeah, that's
horses, like
true.
wild
That's true.
Mustangs are just going
Actually,
to run
yeah.
around doing their thing. But to break them in, to like breed them, break them in, to break them from being wild, and then to
Mm,
force them to do a thing you want them to do, like you're forcing them to run this
yeah.
track when
Well,
if you were
I
doing
think
it
when
like
we
with
get
your
into the
cat,
nitty gritty of it, I can say, yeah, okay, I don't like it. I don't approve of it. When we get into the nitty gritty, it's like, basically, like again, I say, like I say, just again, I'm basically against breeding in general. So I think basically any activity that involves breeding an animal for a specific purpose is probably unethical because it violates the natural order of the ecosystem.
yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. And then, and I think a lot of things just depend on what your options are. Cause I always try to come up with a good steel man for anything I feel. And so even though I feel like we shouldn't ride horses, I imagine that before cars were invented, if I knew of a doctor that lived in a certain area and then my kid was sick and I had to get my kid to the doctor immediately, I would throw
Yeah,
my kid on a horse and ride down there, even though I don't feel like
yeah.
that horse should be obligated to be carrying humans.
No, but maybe that horse
Yeah.
wants to help you. Maybe the horse appreciates that you've. I don't know if you know. This is a hypothetical, but let's say you've been sheltering that horse from some storms, and you've given it some food or a pasture to graze upon or whatever. Maybe the horse wants to help you. I don't know, but in a way, it's not necessarily implied that you would have to force the horse like um but I totally get what you mean that in practice people do treat animals like property and just force them to do things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah, obviously that's wrong. I think force in general using force or exercising an unreasonable power dynamic is just inherently unethical, regardless of your intention, regardless of your ends. I think force in general is just unethical.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I definitely agree with you. Yeah. Well, do you have any other thoughts? Did you have any like questions you had for me or anything on just veganism in general or animal rights or anything?
No, not off the top of my head. One thing I was going to ask you about: what do you think about birds? Right, because I always, in my head, right, it seems like a hell of a thing to keep a fucking pet bird in a cage. But then you see these pet birds and they look kind of happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a paradox, you know what I mean? Because they seem like they're kind of happy, but
Mm-hmm.
in my head that seems so wrong because the bird is supposed to be like flying in the sky, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I guess it would all come down to the understanding. Like, if we observe a certain type of bird out in the wild and they like to just be in one spot and not fly around or something, and then we can, like, we can
Yeah.
just detect that they want to be in a small area. But like, I'm with you. It doesn't make any sense because they should. Most animals like to be out and about, running around, doing their thing, or in a bird's case, flying. So,
Mm.
I don't think anybody. Here's the thing: you got to look at the reason they're doing it. Is a human having a bird in its house to make the bird have a good life? I feel like most pet owning is because the human feels good having this animal that makes them feel better.
Yeah, and I think that's wrong as well. That's one thing I'd like to say is like, when it comes to having a pet, I'm for it in the situation where like you're taking responsibility as a human to try and give a better life to some animal. But I don't think it's right to think of it as like, oh, I want this for me. Like, oh, I really love that blue shirt, so I'm gonna buy that blue shirt because that's my fashion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of approach to a living being is totally disgusting, in my opinion. I don't think that
Yeah.
you should ever like, I don't know, get a pet for your own sake. It should be a sacrifice. Like sometimes people think I'm a dickhead because I'll be like, yeah, fuck, my cat's a pain in the ass. He is because he's my responsibility, right? But that's actually good. That means I'm trying to give him a good life, at some albeit minor expense to myself. But it's not for me. You know, it's not a selfish thing. It's actually like it's actually like, yeah, okay, well, I didn't want him to just die, so I had to take care of him.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, I'm with you. The weird one for me is people owning snakes. Like,
Oh yeah, that's a very strange one. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And then you have to
I
breed
can't
animals to
imagine
feed
owning a
them.
snake.
And there's no way that the snake's getting any joy. People just pick it up every once in a while and then it just sits in a tiny cage and it's no
Mm.
good.
Yeah, that seems like a really really weird one. Same thing. I have to say, I do feel the same basic way about spiders as well. You notice people
Mm.
keep spiders sometimes, like even real big spiders, and it's
Yeah.
like I don't know. I don't know. Is that spider happy being in a little like box or enclosure or whatever? I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe because they probably don't move around too much in real life, but at least they could if they wanted to. And I don't know, yeah, there's something that instinctively rubs me wrong about those sort of pets. Yeah, if it's
Mm-hmm.
something, I even don't like fish. I don't like people that get fish and they
Mm-hmm.
keep it in the little tank or whatever, because it's like, mate, that even if it was like a little lake fish in the tiniest pond or something, it's
Mm-hmm.
still like a different world compared to a fish tank. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's really egregious. Is like the fish tank stuff, and because that's like it's sort of like making them into a I don't know, like a mantelpiece or like an
Mm-hmm.
ornament or something. Like they're
Yeah.
just for display, and it's like that's a life, that's a conscious being, and you're just using it for like aesthetics. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's almost like making you want to see this real life thing in person instead of watching an animal documentary or something, and it's
Yeah,
there for you to
yeah.
look at and feel good, and then 99% of the time not even see. I would say the only pets that make some sense would be the ones that intentionally choose to make contact with you. So like cats and dogs,
Mm,
at least they will come up to you, they'll lay on top of you, they'll snuggle you, and so they're showing that they're making a connection with you. So some part of them isn't just trapped for fun. And but
mm.
yeah, spiders, snakes, fish, any of these things, they're they're not going to have any more joy with you than out in the wild. The only argument would be that maybe they'll have longer lives being in a cage versus the wild because in the wild so many things are killed, but it's still probably not even worth it because it'd be better for it to have an option to have a natural life. Oh, hello? Hello. I think he cut out. He might be back soon. I'm going to look at these comments real quick. Supply and demand. We need to stop breeding animals as pets. They don't exist for our desires. No, I agree 100%. And it's not just that we need to stop breeding them as pets. It's that we almost have to make a law to work towards having the ownership not exist at all, even with guardianship. Because as long as that exists, then the ones that do get bred, even if we're intentionally trying to not breed them, or the ones that breed on their own, people will keep getting, and it'll keep being normalized. There has to be some way to work towards them not like, because I get the idea of rescuing, feeling good, you're taking care of one that's already here, but normalizing that having of it is just continuing it. It's they're if you had something like where it was illegal to own them and the ones that existed all went to a sanctuary or something and died out, then every time one that was found that wasn't spayed or neutered, it gets spayed or neutered, and then all of the domesticated ones just die off or something, then we're working towards the idea of them not being bred. But as long as it's normalized to own, even if it's rescued, there is a problem there. Lewis said, eating only bananas is a raw frugivore diet. Humans didn't evolve to eat a diet. Okay, so yeah, Lewis and Honest Doubter are talking about diet stuff. I kind of agree with both of them. I agree with Honest Doubter that we are likely frugivores or something like it naturally. But we can discover things that so no animals besides humans can cook food, but we can discover that cooking food can be beneficial for us. There's a good chance that before we were able to cook food, we just ate food all day long, like most animals do, just trying to nonstop eat. As soon as we can cook stuff, we can eat things like potatoes and carrots, and well, I guess you can eat carrots without cooking them, but you can eat bigger quantities of calories and therefore not have to be eating all day long. And that seems to have had an impact on how we evolved in our brains and whatnot. But there's things like beans that you can't eat dry. You have to cook them, and grains and stuff. And so I think something being natural and how we evolved doesn't mean that it's the right way. But I also think that we probably are something like frugivores. It's probably best for us to eat the majority fruit and then eat some greens and some seeds here and there and some nuts. That's the way I lean. But I think Lewis is right as well, that there's so many plants. There's so many things to eat, and so many things that need to be cooked that you can cook. And even Ben, who I was just talking to, with meat, like people can eat meat, people can eat fruits and veggies, people can cook fruits and veggies, there's so many different things that those things in different ways are obviously better than nothing. And it's hard to know exactly what thing would be necessarily like bad for us and in what amounts. So I think it's complicated. I was going to wait a second in case he came back, because that would be cool to talk. But it seems like maybe there's an issue with his connection. So maybe I'll talk to him in a future date. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. I know I was a little harsh during that conversation towards maybe your typical vegan. But I really think there's something to it. Like, there's so many people I talk to that are not vegan that are like that guy that I just talked to, where they eat all the animal products, but they also think it's only acceptable to eat animal products for health. So they aren't just eating for taste pleasure. They're not just eating Big Macs and ice cream cones and cakes and stuff. And I would say that it's clearly better to do that, to be a healthy person at a healthy weight that is eating the amount of meat they're eating for health benefits, where somebody else that eats animal products is 100 pounds overweight and is eating way more food and eating just for taste pleasure, and so causing more harm. And I think there's a big difference there. But one of the most important things, even aside from that diet aspect of things, that person I just talked to has almost all the same stances with most of us vegans on most of the other side topics, the idea of owning most pets, the idea of owning, using animals for entertainment, the idea of how animals are treated in farms. And I really think there is something to us vegans having conversations with people like that and trying to spread the word on improving these things, because then you get people thinking about things, you get the conversations flowing. Because without conversations like that, it almost feels like the majority of the world just doesn't care about animals at all. When I think some don't, and some just haven't talked about it. Because most of them don't want to talk about the idea of they either need to become vegan or there's nothing else to talk about. A lot of them probably would have interest in talking about some of these issues. Let's see. Okay, gotcha. Oh, hello, Pia. Okay. So I think that's it. I think I'm going to hop off here. Hopefully I'll talk to him again. Sorry to end this, and Lewis and Honest Outer are not going to be able to continue this conversation they're having. But you guys are two of my favorite people, and I'd love to have you guys maybe come on the channel sometime and do a little debate, maybe discussing these two ideas. And by two ideas, I mean the idea you guys are discussing about diet and how we evolved. I think that'd be really cool to have both of you on here, and I think you guys would enjoy each other as well. Cool. Awesome. Good talking, guys. You guys take care.